Hi everybody. Wanted to show you one of the latest features within Frontend Creator. Now that we've switched over to GitHub, one of the things that I've noticed, and I think quite a few users have noticed, is if you set up GitHub pages, there is a slight delay between when you save and you commit and having the page being able to render and preview your changes. And that makes sense because of all the steps GitHub needs to do, or Git needs to do in order to commit and file those changes. And then Jekyll actually tries to run even though it's a static site. But let me just show you something that I'm working on right now that will actually look at your package.json, and based on your package.json, it'll actually use system.js and create a configuration file for you automatically. It does this using a helper. We have a helper index, so index.html. Pretty simple. It's going to do a couple extra things that I'm doing just for the sake of this example. But ultimately, it's just using system.json, and then there's an index.dev.js. You would only use this while you're developing using Frontend Creator, and then typically I actually have an index.prod.html, and then I would use something like Circle CI or whatever your continuous integration to actually do your build, and copy that index file as your main index when you actually deploy to production. So let's take a look and see what's in the index just quickly, dev.js. This is where it actually reads the package.json, and then it actually tries to resolve all those references to create a SystemJS config file for us on the fly. It does several other things. We're using a ServiceWorker as well. What the ServiceWorker does is it will use the cache API to cache all of the main dependencies that are in our package.json, with the exception of local files. But anything that's going over npm or unpackaged, since we're using unpackaged for the majority of this, it just caches that. And so let me show you what happens here. I'm going to kind of close these down. We're just going to look here, and you can see that it's pulling in a lot of information here. We also have our service worker, and all this service worker here does is just do a simple install, and then it's going to try caching pretty much anything and everything it can, and with an exception. We use something called PostMessaging, and we post messages whenever we save, and Frontend Creator actually does that, and it communicates with whatever project you're working in. So within Frontend Creator, as soon as I do a save, it's actually going to send a post, and it'll actually target any tabs that we have open, or any iframes that we have open as well. So without further ado, I'm going to leave the package.json open, but I'm going to just maybe preview this simple at.html. We actually have a lot of resources that we're loading, but if I do this, it loaded it, and this is what it built dynamically based off of the package.json. So looking at these dependencies, you can actually see that it built this on the fly. It's created this. It actually caches this in local storage, so it doesn't have to create it unless there's a change in version numbers. And it does the map section. It does the packages section for system.js, and it also does the meta section, which is really nice because of dependencies and making sure that everything is loaded properly. The thing that I really want to show you though is when I actually make a change and I want to do a save. So say for example, you will actually see a delay, and we'll see the overlay that shows us a delay, showing that it's in the process of saving. So we'll just say real-time changes or something like that. And as soon as I hit Control S to save, it actually is trying to save, but it's actually come back with the real-time changes here, as you can see, before it even finished committing to GitHub. And I'm able to do this because I'm using a service worker, and I'm using that post message, and I communicate across to the iframe. I can do the same thing though if I open up, and let's bring this side by side if possible, where I make the changes. So you're not going to see it immediately, but you'll understand in a second. So let's just make the changes and say, what about now? And get rid of that. And you'll see that it's refreshing the iframe, as well as it's refreshing any tabs that have been launched by Frontend Creator to keep everything in sync. And the purpose of this is just I love GitHub. I love the fact that we're now using repositories for storage and being able to have a full repo behind the scenes. But one of the things I missed with using blob storage or S3 buckets was the fact that it was lightning fast. And so I wanted to have something like this. I know that StackBlitz, I know that Code Sandbox all have something like this. Basically, all I'm doing is I'm just using SystemJS to provide this for me. And then for speed, even though SystemJS isn't the best, I'm caching using a ServiceWorker. And then whenever something changes, and this is the bridge, or this is using PostMessage, I send a signal from Frontend Creator via PostMessage to each of these instances on different domains as well, since this is running from localhost, but this is on my GitHub IO Git pages, and it's able to do that across domains using the PostMessage API. And then once I'm in PostMessages, I override whatever file that I had open, or files, because I can do it in batch, so that once it refreshes, it pulls from the ServiceWorker cache API and gives me the latest and greatest. So wanted to kind of get your opinions, your thoughts. One other thing that I am doing here and that I'm considering doing, and that is, if something changes here in this file, or any files for that matter, I was thinking, instead of when I do a save, keeping it as modified over here so that it shows that it's dirty, and then when you click the actual save button to actually finally commit to GitHub, that would make things even a lot faster. Implicit saves are nice, but at the same time, it's nice to have being atomic and having a unit of work, so that, hey, I modified all 3 of these files. You can do that. You can open up multiple files and make them dirty. Changes here. But if I accidentally hit Control S, then it would actually try to commit everything over the wire. And a lot of times, if all I'm trying to do is just visualize a change, something as simple as this, and just saying, can I see what this looks like before I even commit? By doing the in-memory cache using the ServiceWorker, this would even facilitate that workflow, that use case. So more than anything else, I just wanted to kind of show you guys some thoughts that I'm working on. Doing the M or some sort of style over here is very similar to what you're used to in Visual Studio Code, so I don't think there would be a very big paradigm shift, but just kind of wanted to show you something that I'm working on. This would be an extra step for you as a developer. If you wanted to use the same thing, you would have to, number one, use an index.html like I'm doing, so that it could pull in this index.dev.js, which does all the heavy loading, as well as you'd need this ServiceWorker dev. And I would make both of those available, that you could just inject them straight from Frontend Creator. But that is one thing that you would have to add as a dependency, regardless of whether or not you're using Webpack or Require, in order for Frontend Creator to do this fast, or what I call faster style development, where you're actually seeing it in memory, and regardless of whether or not we're using GitHub. You would kind of have to follow this pattern. I think that's a well enough sacrifice. And in another video, I'll show you guys how I've got Circle CI configured, where it's using the production index.html, which I don't have in this example, but I'll show you in another, and actually building it for production. And it takes maybe about 1 minute to 2 minutes, depending on how many dependencies I have when it does the npm install. But pretty nice, because as soon as I commit, it can immediately kick off, or kick off on demand. I'm considering putting the API for Circle CI and making that available directly within Frontend Creator, so that you could control them as well. I guess relative to what full control you get from the API. But for me, it would be just the being able to kick it off and see the status and things like that. So hope you like what you see here, and I would love to hear some feedback on just trying to make your development experience better. I personally get tired of waiting for the save to finish before I see it up refreshed, and I think this is a pretty fast workflow, and just being able to see things like that without having to wait, I think is going to be awesome. So again, thank you. Look forward to hearing your feedback. Bye.